Good morning, and welcome to our lecture on cross-cultural negotiation in Canada's unique multicultural context. Canada's diverse society, built on Indigenous traditions, French and British heritage, and 22% visible minority populations, creates a dynamic negotiation landscape. Today, we'll explore cultural frameworks like Hofstede's dimensions and the tripartite model, focusing on Indigenous traditions, Quebec's distinct negotiation style, and practical strategies for managing cultural diversity. Our goal is to equip you with skills to navigate Canada's complex negotiations, from business deals in Toronto to Indigenous land claims in British Columbia. Cultural competence is critical in Canada's interconnected economy, where diverse values shape outcomes, as seen in the 2019 Wet'suwet'en pipeline talks. We'll analyze how individualism, collectivism, and power distance influence strategies, alongside challenges like navigating sacred values and regional variations. By examining case studies, such as government-Indigenous agreements, you'll learn to foster trust and achieve equitable outcomes. Canada's Multiculturalism Act and Truth and Reconciliation Commission guide these practices, emphasizing respect and inclusion. By the end, you'll understand how to adapt negotiation strategies to Canada's diverse cultural landscape, ensuring long-term relationships and sustainable agreements. Let's begin by exploring key cultural frameworks shaping Canadian negotiations. Let's explore the cultural frameworks shaping cross-cultural negotiations in Canada, per Brett, 2014, and Hofstede et al., 2010. Canada's multicultural society, with 20% foreign-born residents, demands negotiators navigate diverse communication styles and values. Hofstede's framework highlights Canada's high individualism, 80 out of 100, and moderate power distance, 39 to 100, fostering direct yet respectful negotiations, as in federal-provincial talks balancing egalitarian principles with constitutional roles. The tripartite model identifies Canada as blending dignity, individual-focused, Western, and face, relationship-focused, Indigenous, cultures, evident in business negotiations prioritizing collaboration. Tight versus loose norms show Canada's structured yet flexible approach, seen in labor negotiations favoring mediation. Indigenous traditions, rooted in the Seven Generations principle, prioritize long-term trust, as in land claim talks. Quebec's negotiation culture, shaped by French heritage, emphasizes relational trust and formalities, differing from English Canada's directness. Multiculturalism, per the Canadian Multiculturalism Act, influences diverse negotiation styles, while bilingualism adds complexity, requiring linguistic sensitivity. Regional variations, like Atlantic Canada's community focus, shape strategies. For students, understanding these frameworks is key. Consider a Toronto business deal with Asian Canadian stakeholders. Blending dignity and face approaches ensures equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's inclusive ethos. As we transition, we'll examine Hofstede's dimensions in depth, exploring their impact on Canadian negotiations. Building on cultural frameworks, let's examine Hofstede's dimensions in Canadian negotiations, per Hofstede et al., 2010. Canada's high individualism score, 80 out of 100, emphasizes personal goals, evident in business negotiations where individual contributions drive outcomes, like Toronto's tech sector deals. Moderate power distance, 39/100, fosters egalitarian yet structured interactions, as in federal-provincial healthcare talks respecting constitutional roles. Low uncertainty avoidance encourages flexibility, seen in innovative trade agreements like the 2017 Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Balanced masculinity-femininity reflects Canada's cooperative ethos, prioritizing collaboration over competition, as in labor negotiations using principled approaches. Indigenous contexts introduce long-term orientation, with the Seven Generations Principle Shaping Land Claim Talks, Pirouzi, 2016. Direct yet respectful communication aligns with Canada's multicultural ethos, balancing assertiveness with politeness, as in Quebec's formal negotiations. For students, applying Hofstede's framework is critical. Consider a negotiation in Vancouver involving Indigenous and corporate stakeholders. Balancing individualism with long-term orientation ensures equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's Multiculturalism Act. Challenges include aligning diverse priorities, but flexibility mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore the tripartite model, examining how face, dignity, and honor cultures shape Canadian negotiations. Continuing our exploration, let's examine the tripartite model of face, dignity, and honor cultures in Canadian negotiations, per Brett, 2014. Dignity culture, individual-focused and Western, dominates English Canada's business negotiations, emphasizing personal accountability, as in Toronto's corporate deals. Face culture, relationship-focused and prevalent in Indigenous communities, prioritizes trust and collective well-being, as in land claim negotiations guided by the Seven Generations Principle. Honor culture, respecting hierarchy, appears in formal settings like Quebec's government negotiations, where status is acknowledged. Canada blends dignity and face cultures, fostering collaborative approaches, as in the 2019 Wet'suwet'en pipeline talks balancing individual and collective interests. Cultural sensitivity, respecting diverse values, enhances outcomes, aligning with the Canadian Multiculturalism Act. For students, mastering this model is essential. Consider a negotiation in Alberta's resource sector. Blending dignity and face approaches ensures equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's reconciliation goals. Challenges include navigating cultural tensions, but respectful dialogue mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore tight versus loose cultural norms, examining their impact on Canadian negotiation practices. Following the tripartite model, let's explore tight versus loose cultural norms in Canadian negotiations, per Brett, 2014. Tight norms, structured and rule-based, guide formal negotiations, like federal-provincial agreements adhering to constitutional frameworks. Loose norms, flexible and adaptive, allow creative problem-solving, as in business negotiations in Vancouver's tech sector. Canada balances both, fostering structured yet collaborative negotiations, evident in labor disputes favoring mediation over litigation, per the Canadian approach to conflict resolution. This balance reflects Canada's multicultural ethos, accommodating diverse styles while maintaining order, as in the 2016 Canada Post dispute. Mediation aligns with the Multiculturalism Act's emphasis on cooperation, ensuring equitable outcomes. Cultural adaptability, adjusting to tight or loose norms based on context, enhances success, especially in multicultural settings with 22% visible minorities. For students, understanding these norms is key. Consider a negotiation in Ontario's education sector. Balancing structure with flexibility ensures inclusive outcomes, reflecting Canada's cooperative culture. Challenges include aligning diverse expectations, but mediation mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore Indigenous negotiation traditions, examining their unique role in Canada. Building on cultural norms, let's examine Indigenous negotiation traditions in Canada, per Pirouzi, 2016. Indigenous approaches, rooted in First Nations, Métis, and Inuit cultures, are holistic and relationship-focused, prioritizing long-term trust, as in the 2019 Wet'suwet'en pipeline negotiations. The Seven Generations Principle considers impacts on future generations, contrasting with Western short-term focuses, critical in land claim talks. Incorporating traditional protocols, like ceremonial openings, fosters respect, as in the Great Bear Rainforest Agreement. Respecting oral traditions, valuing storytelling over written contracts, ensures cultural alignment. Acknowledging historical contexts, per the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, builds trust by addressing past injustices. This framework shapes modern negotiations, demanding cultural competence. Canada's reconciliation goals require these practices, especially in resource sectors. For students, mastering Indigenous negotiations is essential. Consider a mining negotiation in Northern Ontario. Respecting protocols and historical contexts ensures equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's commitment to reconciliation. Challenges include historical mistrust, but cultural sensitivity mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore Quebec's unique negotiation culture, examining its distinct dynamics. Following Indigenous traditions, let's explore Quebec's unique negotiation culture, per Morris et al., 2000. Shaped by French heritage, Quebec negotiations emphasize formalities, like structured agendas, seen in government talks. Relational trust, built through personal connections, is critical, differing from English Canada's directness, as in Quebec's business negotiations. Respecting linguistic identity, using French or bilingual communication, fosters trust, aligning with Canada's bilingualism policy. Quebec blends collaborative and hierarchical approaches, reflecting moderate power distance, as in federal-provincial cultural policy talks. Cultural sensitivity to French-English dynamics ensures effective outcomes, critical in Canada's multicultural landscape. With Quebec's distinct identity, negotiators must adapt to formal yet relational styles. For students, understanding Quebec's culture is key. Consider a negotiation in Montreal involving French and English stakeholders. Respecting linguistic identity and building relational trust ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting the Multiculturalism Act. Challenges include linguistic misunderstandings, but bilingual facilitation mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore multiculturalism's impact on negotiation styles, examining its role in Canada. Continuing our exploration, let's examine multiculturalism's impact on Canadian negotiation styles, per Berry, 1980. Canada's diverse population, with 22% visible minorities, introduces varied cultural influences, from Asian Canadian indirect communication to Indigenous collective approaches. Berry's acculturation model highlights integration strategies, where cultural identities are maintained, as most effective, seen in Toronto's multicultural business deals. Respecting diverse values, like community focus in South Asian negotiations, fosters trust. Collaborative problem-solving, aligning with Canada's mediation preference, ensures inclusive outcomes, as in interprovincial trade talks. Cultural competence, understanding diverse norms, enhances success, critical in Canada's interconnected economy. The Canadian Multiculturalism Act mandates cultural accommodation, shaping negotiation protocols in sectors like technology. For students, mastering multicultural negotiations is essential. Consider a negotiation in Vancouver's tech sector. Integration and cultural respect ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's inclusive ethos. Challenges include cultural misunderstandings, but collaborative approaches mitigate risks. As we transition, we'll explore bilingualism as a negotiation factor, examining its role in Canada. Following multiculturalism, let's explore bilingualism as a negotiation factor in Canada, per the Canadian Multiculturalism Act, 1988. French-English dynamics, prominent in Quebec and federal negotiations, require linguistic sensitivity to build trust, as in cultural policy talks. Bilingual communication strategies, like offering materials in both languages, foster inclusivity, critical in Canada's bilingual framework. Respecting linguistic identity, especially in Quebec, ensures respectful engagement, as in Montreal's business negotiations. Bilingualism facilitates cross-cultural dialogue, bridging French and English Canada's distinct styles, enhancing collaboration in interprovincial talks. Aligning with Canada's bilingualism policy strengthens outcomes, reflecting the Multiculturalism Act's ethos. With 20% French-speaking Canadians, negotiators must navigate linguistic nuances. For students, mastering bilingual negotiation is key. Consider a negotiation in New Brunswick's bilingual community. Bilingual strategies and linguistic respect ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's inclusive policies. Challenges include language barriers, but bilingual facilitation mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore regional cultural variations, examining their impact on Canadian negotiations. Building on bilingualism, let's explore regional cultural variations in Canadian negotiations, per Brett, 2014. Atlantic Canada's community-focused culture emphasizes collective well-being, as in fisheries negotiations. The Prairie's pragmatic and direct style, seen in Alberta's oil sector, prioritizes efficiency. British Columbia's collaborative and diverse approach, reflecting its multicultural population, fosters inclusive negotiations, as in environmental talks. Northern Canada's Indigenous influence, guided by holistic traditions, shapes resource negotiations, per Burrows, 2016. Ontario's business-oriented culture, dominant in Toronto, emphasizes evidence-based negotiations. Adapting strategies to these norms ensures effective outcomes, critical in Canada's diverse landscape. The Multiculturalism Act supports regional inclusivity, accommodating varied styles. For students, understanding regional variations is essential. Consider a negotiation in Nova Scotia's fishing industry. Community-focused strategies ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's cooperative ethos. Challenges include aligning regional priorities, but cultural adaptability mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore managing expectations across cultural groups, examining practical strategies in Canada. Following regional variations, let's examine managing expectations across cultural groups in Canadian negotiations, per Morris et al., 2000. Understanding diverse priorities, like Indigenous long-term goals versus corporate short-term profits, ensures alignment, as in land claim talks. Clarifying mutual goals, such as economic growth and trade negotiations, fosters collaboration, as in the 2017 Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Transparent communication, sharing data openly, builds trust, critical in multicultural settings with 22% visible minorities. Adapting to cultural time horizons, like the Indigenous 7 generations principle, ensures respect, as in resource negotiations. Fostering inclusive dialogue, through diverse representation, aligns with the Multiculturalism Act. Ensuring equitable outcomes reflects Canada's collaborative ethos. For students, managing expectations is key. Consider a negotiation in British Columbia's forestry sector. Transparent communication and inclusive dialogue ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's reconciliation goals. Challenges include conflicting priorities, but cultural sensitivity mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore navigating sacred values, examining their role in Indigenous negotiations. Continuing our discussion, let's explore navigating sacred values in Indigenous negotiations, per the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 2015. Sacred values, like spiritual connections to land, are central to Indigenous cultures, as in the 2019 Wet'suwet'en pipeline talks. Respecting these values, through ceremonial protocols, fosters trust. Incorporating traditional practices, like oral agreements, aligns with Indigenous traditions, per Burrows, 2016. Addressing historical grievances, acknowledging past injustices, builds credibility, critical in Canada's reconciliation framework. Building long-term trust, through ongoing consultation, ensures sustainable outcomes, as in land claim agreements. Aligning with reconciliation goals, per the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, demands cultural sensitivity. With significant Indigenous populations, Canada's negotiations require these practices. For students, mastering sacred values is essential. Consider a negotiation in Alberta's oil sector. Respecting cultural protocols and addressing history ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's reconciliation commitment. Challenges include historical mistrust, but respectful dialogue mitigates risks. As we transition, we'll explore a case study on Indigenous land claims, applying these principles. Let's apply our concepts to a case study on Indigenous land claims, a cornerstone of Canadian negotiations, per Burroughs, 2016. The issue involves land rights and resource sharing, as in the 2019 British Columbia land claims, engaging Indigenous communities, governments, and industry. Collaborative talks, incorporating ceremonial protocols and oral traditions, respected sacred values. Transparent communication, sharing historical and legal data, built trust, per the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 2015. The outcome was equitable agreements, balancing resource development with Indigenous rights, fostering long-term trust. Cultural sensitivity was critical, ensuring respect for the seven generations principle. Challenges included historical mistrust and competing economic interests, but Canada's reconciliation ethos facilitated success. For students, this case highlights cultural competence. Consider a similar negotiation in Saskatchewan. Respecting sacred values and transparent dialogue ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's commitment to reconciliation. As we transition, we'll explore a business negotiation case study, examining cross-cultural dynamics in Canada's economy. Following Indigenous negotiations, let's examine a multicultural business negotiation case in Canada, per Berry, 1980. The issue involved a corporate deal in Toronto's tech sector, engaging South Asian, Chinese, and Canadian stakeholders with diverse cultural priorities. Cross-cultural strategies, like adapting communication to indirect Asian styles and direct Canadian norms, fostered understanding. Integration strategies, maintaining cultural identities per Berry's acculturation model, ensured inclusivity. Transparent communication and collaborative problem-solving, aligning with Canada's principled negotiation approach, led to a successful agreement. Cultural competence was key, respecting diverse values like community focus and individual accountability. The outcome was a collaborative deal enhancing economic ties, reflecting Canada's multicultural ethos. Challenges included aligning diverse expectations, but the Multiculturalism Act's framework facilitated success. For students, this case underscores cultural adaptability. Consider a similar negotiation in Vancouver. Integration and cultural competence ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's inclusive economy. As we transition, we'll explore ethical considerations, examining their role in cross-cultural negotiations. Continuing our exploration, let's examine ethical considerations in Canadian cross-cultural negotiations, per Brett, 2014. Ensuring transparency, like sharing data in business negotiations, builds trust across cultures, as in Toronto's tech deals. Promoting fairness and equity, critical in Canada's egalitarian culture, ensures balanced outcomes, as in Indigenous land talks addressing historical redress. Respecting cultural values, like Indigenous sacred principles or Quebec's linguistic identity, fosters inclusivity, aligning with the Multiculturalism Act. Adhering to legal frameworks, such as the Canadian Human Rights Act, ensures ethical conduct, critical in multicultural settings. Fostering trust and integrity strengthens long-term relationships, as in the 2017 Canadian Free Trade Agreement. With 22% visible minorities, Canada demands ethical negotiations respecting diverse values. For students, mastering ethical considerations is essential. Consider a negotiation in Montreal. Transparency and cultural respect ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's inclusive ethos. Challenges include balancing transparency with cultural sensitivities, but legal frameworks guide success. As we transition, we'll review our references, providing resources for mastering cross-cultural negotiations. To conclude, let's review the references informing our exploration of cross-cultural negotiations in Canada. Brett, 2014, in Negotiating Globally provides the tripartite model, explaining Canada's blend of dignity and face cultures. Hofstede et al., 2010, in Cultures and Organizations highlight Canada's individualism and power distance, guiding negotiation strategies. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 2015, outlines ethical frameworks for Indigenous negotiations, emphasizing reconciliation. Berry, 1980, in Acculturation offers integration strategies for multicultural settings, critical in Canada's diverse economy. Morris et al., 2000, in Missing Relations explore relational factors, explaining Quebec's negotiation style. The Canadian Multiculturalism Act, 1988, mandates cultural accommodation, shaping inclusive practices. Boros, 2016, in Freedom and Indigenous Constitutionalism provides insights into Indigenous traditions, essential for resource negotiations. For students, these sources offer a foundation for navigating Canada's multicultural landscape. Explore them to master cultural competence and ethical negotiation. Consider a negotiation in Alberta's resource sector. Cultural sensitivity and transparency ensure equitable outcomes, reflecting Canada's inclusive ethos. Thank you for your attention.